I'm John Bittleston of Terrific Mentors International. My daily paradox today is called Your Singapore and Mine. As I approach my 89th birthday, I want to say thank you to Singapore. I've got many things to be grateful for, and knowing Lee Kuan Yew and his ministers was one of the greatest. I could write a book about Mr. Lee, but I'm going to tell you one story about him. After MBS was built, Mr. Lee was getting quite old by then, and one of his ministers took him up to the top of MBS and showed him the magnificent view of Singapore that we have there. And he said to Mr. Lee, "You built all this." And LKY said no. And he waved his arm across the view from the top of MBS. He said, "They built all this." I think it's a wonderful testimony to Mr. Lee's modest character that he insisted that there should be no statue of him after he'd gone. Society is more than one person, of course, and the leader of any business, any country, forms the culture of that country, and that culture grows and changes. Singapore is one of encouraging others from overseas to bring their creative skills to develop here. So we've had a culture of welcoming people to Singapore and making use of them, and I'm lucky to have been one of those people who was welcomed. There's a dilemma, of course, for us being right in the middle of opposing ideologies, authoritarianism of China, Russia, Turkey, Iran, Belarus, and many others, which is flourishing at the moment, and Western democracy, epitomized by the United States, Europe, Australia, Japan, and again many others. Western democracy on the whole is not doing quite as well as it used to. But only kids take sides in a playground, and we're not in a playground. The more we learn about life and how it's created, developed, and perpetuated, the less certain we are about absolutes. We learn belief is only credible with doubt. We know there are two sides to every argument. Only recently have we learnt that the two sides are actually very close together. Only now are we learning that they must work together. They must meet. Greater knowledge we have, greater forces of conviction, greater physical force than ever before. And these are frightening things to handle. We're mortal. We can make mistakes. We could do what the dodo did. We could have happen to us what happened to the dinosaur. But steadying the craft that finds the middle way between these apparently opposing ideologies requires strength and stature in a very rare combination. And Singapore has those qualities. That's why I stay here. And that's why, God willing, I shall stay here until I die. Well, that's all very fraught, but let me end with a slightly lighter story. When Eliza and I took off, we took off for 5 years in 1999 for a lot of reasons. I'd built a house in Britain, converted a house actually. I'd converted Jane Austen's farmyard, and I wanted to go and live there. And so we went for 5 years. We came back every year to Singapore, of course, because we have friends here and our apartment was here and so on. The last time we came back, the time we came to stay back here forever, I arrived at the airport and handed my passport over to the immigration officer. She was a nice Malay lady, and she did the work she had to do on the passport. Then she looked me in the eye, handed it over, and said, "Welcome back. It's nice to have you home." "It's nice to be home, ma'am," I replied. Thank you, Singapore.